Hello again. In the previous segment, just as a little refresher, we walked through the calculation of Pearson's R, the statistical display or mathematical display of a relationship or investigation into relationship of two variables. In the case of that example, we're testing the relationship, we're investigating the relationship between hours spent socializing and hours spent studying. And we arrived at a value for Pearson's R, if you'll recall, and if you don't recall, check out your handout, of 0.485. I'm going to refer to at least one part of a handout from Blackboard called Interpreting Pearson's R. So if you don't have that handout, go ahead and hit pause and go get that handout. I'm going to go ahead and let you read that handout on your own. I will refer to what is the third page of that handout in a little bit. But really, here's the thing about Pearson's R. Pearson's R, when we go through the math that's necessary to calculate Pearson's R can tell us, much like scatter plots, in a manner of speaking, three pieces of information. One, if a relationship exists, all right? So if we achieved a non-zero value for Pearson's R, that's not entirely true because we haven't covered significance testing yet, but we will. The other thing we can tell from Pearson's R calculation is the direction of the relationship. And the direction of the relationship is pretty easy to determine because that's simply whether or not the value you got for Pearson's R is positive, meaning more than zero, or negative, meaning something less than zero. In addition, Pearson's R can tell us the magnitude or strength of the relationship. And the magnitude or the strength of the relationship, and again, you might want to just go ahead and read that handout first before you watch the rest of this. You don't have to, but it might be helpful. So if you want to, go ahead and pause and do that. Read this handout. But this third sheet is something that I put together that hopefully will help demonstrate what I mean by the magnitude or the strength of the relationship. Here's what you need to know, to put it as plainly and succinctly as I can. Once you calculate Pearson's R, once you find the value, the number of Pearson's R using the data that you have or the data that you've been given, you can determine whether or not the relationship is positive or negative simply by whether or not the value that you achieved or calculated is positive or negative. In the case of the example we just ran through, the result was positive, right? 0.485 is a positive number. If it was negative 0.485, I would be calling it a negative number, but it's not negative, it's positive. So I could describe the relationship between hours spent socializing and hours spent studying as being positive. That doesn't answer the question of strength or magnitude. In order to determine the strength or magnitude, all I got to know is how far away or close that value is from 0 or the limit of 1 or negative 1. Now when you look at this number line, you'll see there's a negative 1 down here on the left side and a positive 1 up here on the right side. There's a reason why those limits are there, and the reason is because the formula, dig this, the formula for Pearson's R does not allow for values to exceed these limits. In other words, if you conduct analyses for Pearson's R and you got a value that's somewhere below negative 1 or somewhere above positive 1, something went wrong. So know up front that these are the limits, bless you, Choxy, these are the limits of Pearson's R. These are the limits of Pearson's R. Positive 1 and negative 1 are the limits of Pearson's R. Pearson's R simply has to mathematically fall somewhere within these intervals. Now, when Pearson's R falls very close to zero, we would describe that relationship as being weak, whether it's negative or positive. This is very important. The direction of the relationship, positive or negative, has absolutely nothing to do with strength. Okay, do not conflate or confuse those things. The direction of the relationship, whether the relationship is positive or negative, has nothing to do with strength. Strength is simply determined whether or not the value is close to 0 or far away from 0. The further away from 0 you get, the stronger the relationship, whether it's positive or negative. The further away from 0 you get, the stronger the relationship. The closer you are to 0, the weaker the relationship. So for example, a Pearson's R value of, and I'm just going to put some orientation marks on my copy. Negative 0.3, negative 0.7. Typically, again, generically speaking, because there's a few caveats related to Pearson's R that we need to be aware of. Relationships or Pearson's R values that fall between 0 and negative 0.3 can be described as weak. Likewise, positive 0.3 and 0, weak. Relationships that fall between negative 0.3 and negative 0.7 can be described as moderate. Likewise, relationships that fall between positive 0.3 and positive 0.7 can be described as moderate. And relationships that fall above or between negative 0.7 and negative 1 can be described as strong. And relationships that fall between positive 0.7 and positive 1 can also be described as strong. So here's a question for you. Which relationship is stronger, negative 0.79 or positive 0.79? The answer is neither. They are both of equal strength. However, they describe different relationships. One coefficient, one Pearson's R, describes the relationship as positive 0.79. One coefficient describes the relationship as negative 0.79. Here's another question. Which relationship is stronger, 0.5 or negative 0.4? Look at the number line and think about that one. Which relationship is stronger? 0.5, which would be up here, positive 0.5, or negative 0.4, which would be here. Here's the number I'm going to ask you, or the question I'm going to ask you. Which correlation is closer to 0? Negative 0.4 would be closer to 0, so that would be the weaker relationship. 0.5 would be the stronger relationship. So in sum, a couple things. Direction, positive or negative, has nothing to do with strength. Strength is determined by how close your Pearson's R value is to 0 or how far away it is from 0. The closer your Pearson's R value is to negative 1 or positive 1, the stronger the relationship. The closer your Pearson's R value is to 0, positive or negative, the weaker the relationship. So going forward, one of the questions I often get is, where's the threshold for weak, moderate, strong relationships? And that question really isn't easy to answer. The answer is the context. The answer is the context of what's referred to as the extant literature or existing literature. It really depends on what other scholars in a particular field within a particular subject matter have found before. However, for the purposes of this class, we can pretty much use the scale that I created in an impromptu fashion here. Correlations that fall within this realm, positive or negative, 0.3 or less, or negative 0.3 or less, in a manner of speaking, would be considered weak. This would be considered moderate, and this would be considered strong. Pearson's R that exceeds towards negative 1 and positive 1, exceeds negative 0.7 or positive 0.7. All right, that is another segment on Pearson's R.